Hi everybody, hope you're well. It's Friday, so getting into another weekend, and the weather looks good, and different type of bank holiday weekend, but we got to bear with it for another while. So what I'm going to go through here is some of the challenges that people, job seekers, have come to me with over the last while, that they're real challenges that they're encountering in the marketplace right now, and there does seem to be a sense of despair, a lot of frustration, and people are just not getting any engagement at times when they apply for jobs or do interviews, and all of a sudden they don't hear anything back for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to call out, there's only 3 or 4 that I can possibly get through in this video, but certainly feel free to send on any queries to me afterwards, and I'll certainly do my best to propose a solution for you in terms of overcoming those challenges. So the first one was, so I've had my CV on Monster and Indeed job sites for the last couple of months, and I haven't heard it got any traction whatsoever. So when I spoke to that client, that job seeker, the first thing that became apparent was that they hadn't updated their details in about 2 months. So what you must bear in mind is that when a recruiter or a hiring company stumble across your profile on Indeed or Monster and it hasn't been updated in 2 months, then they may well assume, it's almost that subconscious, piece coming in terms of their thinking, that you're already sorted for the job and you're no longer on the lookout. But whereas if Killian O'Leary here, for example, updated his profile yesterday and he's the same skill set, then of course they're going to ring him first, because he's just updated his details yesterday and he's obviously still very much on the lookout. So that's a little tip. Maybe put a calendar reminder in for yourself that when your CV is up on any of these sites, update it once a week. It freshens the thing up, I suppose, for the reader, and they're very much aware that you're on the lookout still, and there's no barrier for them picking up the phone to you, essentially. So the next one was, my CV was sent in by a recruitment agency, by 2 different recruitment agencies, twice for the same role. So on investigation, in both instances, they didn't actually get an email confirmation from the recruitment company to say that their CV had been sent in. So as a minimum requirement, you as a job seeker, and some people, bear in mind, all of this job searching may be new to you. You might have been in a role for a long time, and this may all be alien territory to you. You need to insist that the recruiter send you a confirmation email that your CV has been sent to ABC Limited on this date for this role, okay? Because the beauty of that is, when the next recruitment company ring you for the same role, you can refer to your Gmail, your Hotmail or whatever and say, actually, XYZ recruitment company have just been on to me, they've confirmed in writing that my CV has been sent, so I'm okay, thank you. Because that has a brand implication as well, because if your CV is sent to the same company by 2 or 3 different agencies, it damages your brand and it doesn't look good, really. So it shows that you have control over where your CV is going, and take that control and ownership by insisting on getting a confirmation of where your CV is going. That also ties in with the journaling piece. It's a bit of advice, folks. Get that process in whereby when you apply for roles, make sure you document it, how you applied, on what date, and through what medium. Was it on Indeed, company direct website or whatever, and then diarise a week ahead to follow up again, if you haven't had any feedback at that point. So one of the other queries was, when is the right time to follow up on an application? So this is a really important one, folks, because I suppose you want to get it right, the balance right between annoying somebody, who's maybe a recruiter or a company, a hiring person within a company, but also getting the point across to them that you're very interested in the role. So if you send a CV and you haven't heard anything in a week, then I would say the following Monday or whatever, I would definitely be following up to see, can you apply, can you get feedback, or is there any update at this point in time? Because they have your CV after all, it's your document, so you have a right to know kind of what's happening with your CV as well. I would be careful, folks, if you're applying for jobs in the bigger companies, multinationals, and this is something that came up. Somebody applied in for a role and they didn't hear anything back in a month. So on investigation, the company that they applied into was a large multinational. And I think with large multinationals, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you're not quite sure where the CV is going. If it goes to one of these kind of info landing, email addresses or whatever, you don't really know whose desk your CV is going to land on, so you can't possibly follow up with the right person. So for example, if you were applying for a role with Microsoft tomorrow, for example, just choosing Microsoft as an example, why not go on to LinkedIn? Why not look to see other people who may have a relevant job title like HR or recruitment within Microsoft, and try and connect in with them and build your network of people within Microsoft, and then ask them who would be the person that I should direct my CV to for job reference number, whatever it is. And then before you press send on your job application, you're aware that you have somebody that you can follow up with subsequently, because that's leading to a lot of frustration. People are getting automated emails, and somebody last week said to me they got an automated email to say they were rejected for a role, and then a week later they actually got called for interview for the same role. So there's a lot of admin that's not quite right internally in the larger companies, and a lot of automated messaging coming out, and it's not a great candidate experience. So try and get a contact name, email address or number before you press that send button, because it can be important to get the follow up and to get a level of engagement and feedback on your application. I can't overestimate that or overemphasize that enough, really. The other one was, I spoke to a candidate who was very, very disgruntled that they didn't get a call for interview for the job. They felt they ticked every single box on the job spec, and for some reason their CV was just not, didn't do the job to get them the interview. Okay, they got rejected. So when I looked at the CV and I looked at the job spec, it was quite apparent to me that the job seeker didn't do a cross-reference in terms of their CV and the job spec to say, okay, this is the example where I take that bullet point that's been required on the job spec and so on. So there was a lot of experience that the candidate had that they didn't actually have documented on their CV. So they were saying to me, I have all this experience, but yet the CV didn't tell the reader, whoever that may be, whether it be a recruitment company or a HR person, that they did have that experience. So how are they possibly to know that you have it if it's not on your CV? Listen, folks, this is going to be very competitive for the next while, the job market, okay? And your CV needs to really have a desired impact on the reader. It needs to tell your story from a professional point of view as accurate as possible, and be essentially fit for purpose and protect, really, catch the attention of the person who's going to be reading it. So if you have the relevant experience, you need to do a double check. Get somebody else or a career coach to look at your CV before you press send, to go, okay, if this landed into your inbox as a job application, would you call me for interview? I think, you can't do enough of that, double checking. And again, you're shooting yourself in the foot really if you don't put in, those buzzwords, if you do have them, but yet the reader can't possibly see them wanting to call you for interview. At the end of the day, the function of the CV is to get you the interview. After that, you sell yourself, but you don't get that opportunity unless your CV is ultimately fit for purpose. So it kind of one follows the other essentially. So the CV absolutely fit for purpose there. And again, one of the other ones for me was as I said, the CV, but doing, I suppose, a little bit of research on similar job specs that fit your skill set. So go online, look to see what hiring companies, especially if you're new to the job search piece, right? So go on to Indeed.ie, put in, for example, software developer. See what companies are looking for in terms of the different buzzwords right now in the job specs. And then it will allow you then to go back to your CV and put in those buzzwords to make sure you grab the attention of what's in vogue right now, and have all the the modern phrases and so on, because otherwise you won't catch the reader's attention when you apply in. And what you must bear in mind is it may not always be the hiring manager who sees your CV first. It could be somebody who may be a little bit junior at times and maybe doesn't fully understand the role. They've been told by the hiring manager to do a Control F on various buzzwords, and if those buzzwords are not on your CV, you don't get called for interview. So it's about guarding against that. So look at as many job specs as possible, get all your examples on a blank Word doc, I would suggest first, and then put them into the CV under the different jobs where relevant as well. But never send a CV out without getting a second opinion from somebody in terms of how relevant all the buzzwords are on your CV and how relevant your CV is in general. But also, don't press the send button on the application unless you know for sure that you have somebody within that company that you can follow up with as well. That's really important. So the CV at the start, somebody to follow up with, then prep for interview really, really well, and then hopefully you have a job offer at the end of it. So there's a lot in that, folks. Don't rush it. People are beginning to panic a little bit. I spoke to somebody the other day and they're trying to they're panicked. They're trying to get up and running because they've lost their source of income. Step away from it. Take your time, do it right, and follow a process that works for you. But never send an important document or an application out without doing your due diligence on who you're sending it to, how you can possibly follow up to get feedback in a week's time, and making sure your CV is double checked by somebody, folks. I can't overestimate that really at this point in time, and overemphasize it as well. So for more details, there's lots more. If you want me to just come back on an individual challenge you're having right now, there's loads of challenges out there. Feel free to send me an email, and it's killian@progresscoaching.ie for some individual career coaching as well, folks. Take care, and don't despair. Stay positive, and we'll get there. Mind that self-talk, the positive self-talk, will also set you up for success when you do get called for interview as well. Okay, take care. Have a long weekend that's really enjoyable, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye bye.